make a start. I'm doing 3 cards today because I wanted to try and use as much of the product that was on TV as I could. I know I'm sort of a day late, but I haven't managed to watch the show this morning, so I'm not quite sure what's left or what isn't. But I've got 3 cards and one of the sets runs through all 3. So the one set that runs through all 3 cards is this one. And I just love this set. I know Claire used it on Tuesday as well, and it's just, I think the mix of fonts on it and the sentiments as well, they're just fab. I love them. And I haven't kept mine all in one sheet. I tried and it just didn't work. Hi Linda. It didn't work for me. I mean, it might work for everybody else, but it didn't work for me. So what I did was, I know it makes the pack a bit bulky, but I don't mind. So I left them on the carrier sheet and I cut the stamps on the carrier sheet. I didn't mean I cut the stamps, I cut the carrier sheet so that the stamp still stays on the carrier sheet, and then I put the relevant die that goes with it. And I've just split them up into little bags so that I'm not searching for the right die to cut my sentiment, and it just works for me. So just a different idea for you to sort of store them if leaving them on one sheet doesn't work for you. So that's what I'm using all the way through the projects, but then I'm doing 3 different projects, 2 with this one and 1 with the viola. So this is the one we're starting with, and I'll go through products for each card as we get to them, okay? Right, so I'm using the Narcissus, I'm using the embossing folder and the die. The die is in there, it's behind the embossing folder, and the layering stencils. And then I'm also using the layering geometric stencil as well, which came with the Ultimate bundle. It was a free gift with purchase quite some time ago. So if you didn't get it then and you bought the Ultimate this time, then you will have got it this time. It's just such a fabulous little stencil set, but you could use any stencil set, any sort of background stencil set that you've got in your stash. It doesn't really matter. It's just I chose this one because it was on the show with everything else. And then I've also used the ribbons and bows. This wasn't on the show, and it just finished off the card that I'm doing first. So let's start with card number 1. Now this card was sort of inspired by our lovely Valerie, and again it was based on a card using the marigold, which was what I was going to do, but I've had to change it and I've used the Narcissus instead. So what I've done to start with is I've just brushed some blue ink in the background. Okay, now I have used an interference ink, and I have used one of my wonder brushes. Now I know Lisa says that the interference inks don't like the wonder brushes, but to just add some background colour, it was enough for what I wanted it for. So if that's what you want to use it for, try your wonder brushes. They might not work, but on this occasion for me they did. Okay, it's not perfect, but I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted some colour in the background. And then I've used one of the stencils from that set. So I've used this one, and again I've just gone through with same interference ink, and I think I used Opal Blush, beautiful blue this says, and I've just inked through the stencil. And because it's a repeating pattern, you can match it up and just go all the way around the edge. I haven't gone straight in the middle. I didn't want any in the middle, and that reason for that will become clear, hopefully. So that's my background done, all right? And then obviously I wanted my Narcissus on the front. So I've already stenciled, die cut and embossed my flowers that are going in the middle, okay? But I didn't want to leave it there, and this is where I say I've based it on a card that our lovely Valerie has done in the group. I've creased that somewhere. I must have picked it up and trapped it in something, but never mind. Now what Val did with hers, and bear in mind she used the marigold, she stenciled in the background exactly the same. okay, and then she's laid this on top but slightly to one side, so you've got a bunch of flowers in the background and a bunch of flowers in the foreground. Okay, I'm doing similar, but I'm flipping mine because I didn't want them facing the same way. I wanted the flowers to go the other way. All right, so that's the one I'm going to put on the top, and then I'm going to do my stenciling through the back of the stencil rather than the front. Okay, now I don't know whether I'll be better off opening this out like that. I think I probably will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my card where I want the flowers, and I want the flowers to sort of come right towards the edge and down towards the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to place my card there, and because I can use the grid I can make sure that it's straight, and then I'm just going to tape the edge of the card so that the card doesn't move. Because it's a little bit sort of unusual, then I'm going to I just don't want it to move at all. So let's make a start then. So I'm going to use exactly the same colours that I used on my already die cut piece, but what I'm going to try and do is do them quite a bit softer. Okay, so I'm going to start with my margarita, but I'm going to go as gently as I can because I want this to be sort of there but not there, if you know what I mean. I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be this vibrant. I want the colours to be exactly the same, but I want them to be a little bit more pale. Okay, so again, like I say, I'm going through the back of the stencil because I wanted the flowers to be facing the other way. So let's just, and I'm not, don't worry about the fact that you've got this stenciled bit in the background, because all you want really is the hint of the flowers in the background. So the stenciled bit in the background isn't really going to interfere too much, hopefully. And I think once I've put the other flowers on the top, it'll look fine. Okay, so I've used these this morning and then I've had to wash them all straight away, which is not something I usually do, got to be honest. So then we're going to come in with Summer Garden, which is an interference ink, and you know I love this one. So I've got 2 different shades of green there for my leaves, and then we're going to come in and do the flowers. And I've gone a little bit too far across there actually, but never mind, I'm not worried about it. So the flowers in the background, again, I did blue, and I used the Opal Blush Shimmer, which is, it's just a beautiful blue, but I did use my Wonder Brush. Okay, and like I said, I know Lisa says Wonder Brushes don't work with them, but when you want a light background, they do. And because you're coming off Mylar, because the ink stays wet on the Mylar, you're reactivating the ink all the time, because you're taking it off like a, you know, plastic as opposed to card. Yes, it dries really quickly on card, but because you're taking it off the Mylar all the time, you're reactivating it, so it's gonna provide you with enough colour for your background. See, I like that. It's subtle, but it's there. So then I'm going to come in with a slightly different blue, and I'm going to come in with Peacock Tails. Now remember, this is the wrong way round on the lid. So when you take the lid off, you'd expect to see purple, but it isn't, it's blue. So I've written black and white on the top here so that I can, it reminds me that I've got to use the right colour. So now I'm coming in the centres of these flowers. And again, I don't want to go all the way in these apertures. I just want to go from the middle and work my way outwards. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to work my way out. It's a little bit heavy-handed there actually, but hopefully if I work it more, it might. I just needed to take a little bit more ink off that. I was a little bit just too eager there. But when I've put the other flowers down, the flowers might hide some of that. So I'm not, again, I'm not too worried. and again start in the middle of the flower and work my way out. So I've done the same on every flower. Now that is going to be a little bit too heavy for what I wanted, but I'm not worried about it because I think it will, the other flowers will hide a lot of it. Now I'm going to come in now with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ink pad, Milk Chocolate Roses. I don't know where she thinks of the names, but it's just so fitting. And I'm using this because it's not a brown per se. It's sort of a yellowy brown, but it just does exactly what I want it to do. And where's my other brush gone? Oh, I've lost a brush. There it is. Under my Ultimate. Right. So I'm going to go in with this. You can see it's a really sort of chocolatey brown on the ink pad, but when you're using it, it's not that brown. Like I say, it's more of a yellowy brown, but it just gives enough of a colour. Obviously I'm using it quite lightly and I'm taking my ink out of the lid as opposed to actually off the ink pad, because I don't want to oversaturate this colour. So by using the ink that I've taken off the brush previously out of the lid, I'm in more control over what I'm putting through the stencil. Are you with me? So just go on with this, and I'm going to use this again on the next layer, because the next layer is those sort of papery bits on the back of the Narcissus. So it's the perfect colour for that as well. So just add my colour down on here. Yeah, like that. So these bits now are the papery bits on the back of the flowers. Now I can be a little bit more heavy-handed with these because they're quite sort of larger area, so they'll show up more. So I don't mind being a little bit more heavy-handed with these. Like so. And they won't look out of place when you take the stencil off because of what they are and where they are. Perfect. And then we just come in to do the centres of the flowers. Right, so I'll put that to one side. Now I'm coming in to do the centres of the flowers. Now for the first layer I went with Sweet Treat, which was from the first set of interference inks. Right. So coming in with Sweet Treats, and again I'm going to take a lot of the ink off. And the thing I like about this is when you add this Sweet Treats onto the background, because I've used blue in the background, it's going to give a really lovely light greeny colour once it's dry. And again, like I say, I'm going in quite lightly and I'm taking the ink off the ink pad lid as opposed to off the ink pad. I might refresh the brush off the ink pad at some point, but there is plenty of ink on that lid for you to use. So if you want to go light, inky brush and then take a lot off in the lid and then work from the ink that's in the lid. Safer that way, unless you're heavy-handed like me, obviously. So we're on to the last two. Looking at this now, I think the brown there was a little heavy, but whatever. So now we're going to come in with, what did I come in with? I think I went back in with that Milk Chocolate Roses. So let's take it out of the lid and go through here with that. And then I came in with Golden Sun on my last layer. And really, it's, you know, colours are your own personal choices. I've only gone with blues on this one because I've done pinks on the other Narcissus card, and then I've done sort of pinks and purples on the Viola card. Okay, so last layer, layer 8, and like Claire said on Tuesday, don't be afraid of using your stencils back to front. Okay, you can't emboss the image, but if you're working straight onto your base card, then you can use them either way round and they will look equally as good. I'm just coming on here with this Golden Sun. I do love this colour. Just to put the centres in those flowers. Happy with that. Happy, happy, happy. Okay, so let's take this tape off here. And this tape off here. And then I'll just take a piece of kitchen towel and I'm just going to blot that image, because the interference inks might stay a little bit wet, especially if you're putting interference on top of interference on top of interference. You might get a little wetness that's left on your card. So before you go any further, just blot it. There isn't on this occasion, but there has been on others, so I just wanted to make sure. So that's my image in the background, and then I can come and put my other image here in the foreground. Now you see those flowers have hidden that heavy-handed flower, so I'm actually quite pleased about that, although you can still see the image of it in the background, so you've still got that idea that there are flowers in the background. Okay, so I'm coming across quite a bit so that it looks as though they're sort of all in a bunch. Do you know what I mean? So these are in front of the others. Now I want to put my sentiment down, so I'm going to put my sentiment down before I stick this down so that I know I've got enough room to stamp my sentiment on here. And I'm going straight onto the card. I think I've gone straight onto the card with all three. You can stamp it onto a separate card and then cut it out, because obviously you've got the die to do that. So you know, either ways works. So I'm just going to come down here and put my sentiment down the bottom. Fingers crossed. Perfect. And obviously I've used Lisa's Cloud9 black ink to stamp with. Perfect for stamping with. And then we can come back and finish off our card. So I've already put my 3D pads on the back, just to save a little bit of time. And this is why I went ahead and stenciled this one. Partly because I wanted to save a bit of time, and partly because I needed to clean all my stencils from using them the right way round before I used them the wrong way round. So I thought, well, that'll just save a bit of time as well. So I'm going to pop that on there like so. So we've got two lots of flowers, one in front of the other. And then I'm just going to finish it off with a bow from that ribbons and things. Now I've done two different ones. I've done light on dark and dark on light. Which one? I must admit, I think I went with that in the first place. And then I cut them both and I thought, don't know. So yeah, let's go with that one. So I'm just going to put my glue in the middle here. I'm not going to glue it all over because I don't want it to stick to the card either side. I just want it to stick where those flowers are in the middle. And then just pop that there, just to finish it off. I could go and add some dewdrops over here, but I haven't reached them out, so I'm not going to do it now. But that was my take on the card that Val did with her marigolds. So that was my first one. Quite like that. And then I thought I'd do something a little bit different with the same stamp set. So let me show you the background that I've done first. So I've used on here, I've used the Urn Jug and Vases. Not sure whether there's any of those in stock. I haven't checked, to be honest, so I'm sorry. The Essential Hessian isn't in stock, but of course you could use the bubble wrap or the honeycomb. Any of your sort of background dies that you've got, you could use them the same way. And then I've used the Layering Abstract Squares, and I've used the Crackle stamp on this card. Okay, so that's what I've used here. Now you can see that I've cut the Essential Hessian and I've split it down the middle, and then I've placed it on my card. Now obviously it overhangs. Don't want it to overhang, so I'm going I'm just going to trim those off. And can you see here, my stamping wasn't dry with my crackle stamp. I'm just hoping it hasn't all worn off, doesn't look like it. So make sure your ink is dry, because I've used interference inks, and obviously, like I said, they stay a little bit wetter, and I've stamped them onto satin card, so again they're going to stay wetter again, aren't they? So never mind. So there's my base card, and I've just used the abstract squares at the top of the card. I didn't want it all over because I wanted this to be the sort of main piece at the bottom. And then I thought I'll use the vases. So I've cut my favourite one, and then I've stamped on top with the crackle stamp, and I used that gorgeous milk chocolate roses because I just thought it complemented the rose satin card perfectly. Just gives enough of a hint of colour, and I just like the effect, and I think it suits that vase shape as well. So my vase is going down here, and then I stenciled my flowers and I've cut them down. There was a leaf that comes off here, but I've taken that off, and there was another leaf that came up here, and I've taken that off. So never be afraid of doctoring what you're using. As I've always said to you, don't have to use as is. Use it how you want to use it. You know, that's what they're there for you to interpret how you want. And then I wanted to put my sentiment on, and again I've gone with the same set, and this time I've used Celebrate Your Birthday. So again, before I add these on, I'm just going to stamp my sentiment on here while my card is flat. So again, using Lisa's Cloud 9 black ink, just going to ink my stamp up. Make sure I've got it all covered, and put that up the top here. And then just leave it down just for a couple of seconds so that that ink transfers onto the card. So I've put my sentiment on. Just score that, burnish that score line, and then I can pop my flowers on and finish it off. Okay, so I'm going to put the flowers down first, and then I'm going to put the vase on top. That way I know that I'm going to cover the bottom of those stems on the flowers. Haven't used many pads on here, just enough to make it sit right. So I'm going to pop that down there like so. So you see, you don't need much of a background to just lift the back of the card. I'll just take these pads off here. And again, when you're putting your pads on the back of your vase, don't forget to leave yourself a gap at the top, otherwise your flowers won't fit behind your vase. So then you can pop the vase on like so. I'll try not to touch it too much because I don't think that ink is quite dry still. Okay, so that's the second one, and it looks so different to the first one, but it's exactly the same stencils. You know, it's very dependent on what colours you use on your stencils as to what it looks like, what your finished card is going to look like, and the colours you've used in the background. So then my third one, I didn't want to use the whole of the viola, right? So all I've used on here is this flower and the leaves, and that's all I've stenciled, just to save me stenciling everything that I don't need. So I've actually got a piece that I can use later on. So this is what I'm left with. So if I wanted to, I could do another one, cut it all out, and then I could use these to decoupage on the top. So you've got 3D, but you've got 3D twice. Okay, so you've sort of got, I don't know, totally high definition 3D embossed flowers. It's just, you can use these, so don't throw them away, you know, so just use little bits of it. I've used the nested scalloped and plain stitch squares for my base, used the viola stencils, and I've used the embossing folder and the die. And what I did was I stenciled the bits that I wanted and I kept it whole, and then I die cut it and embossed it so that I wasn't having to fit small pieces into the embossing folder. So I left it as a whole piece and then cut off the bits that I wanted to use. Okay, so for this one, it's just a small, I think it's a 5.5 by 5.5 card. The first one was a 7 by 7 and the other one was a 5 by 7. And all I've done is just score some lines down the left hand side and across the bottom. Okay, and then I've cut myself my squares, and then on the white one I've scored the opposite, so I've scored across the top and down the right so that it gives balance to the base card. Okay, so I'm going to put this down. So I'm going to pop that down there within that sort of semi frame, if you like. Put it straight, I think so. And then this one's going to go on the top, and you can see I've already stamped my sentiment again from the same set. Okay, so then I'm going to pop that down on my matted purple, hoping it's in the middle. So you see now that those score lines on here totally mirror the score lines on the base card. So then I'm going to put my last little bit. Now, as I said to you, I just used one flower and the leaves. Okay, so there's my leaves, and I've used Margarita and that fabulous Summer Garden shimmer from the second set of Interference inks, and on here I've used Pink Champagne and Lavender Fields. That's what I've used, just because they're really nice colours. I mean, Lavender Fields, that's so gorgeous, so gorgeous. And now that is shocking, isn't it? That is so bright, and yet this is what it comes out like. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful colour. It really is. So again, I've 3D'd everything. I'm going to put the leaves down first because that's going to determine where my flowers go. Because obviously I've cut the leaves away from the main image, so they're not full leaves, because they sort of surround a flower. If you look here, they sort of sit in behind this petal on this flower. So in order to not get that petal, I've had to cut them away. So I've got to position them so that my flower will then sit over the top. So I want them to sort of sit near the sentiment, but not hide any of the sentiment. And then the flower, which I've double padded, just to give it a little bit more height, because I want it to sit above these leaves. So I've done it double pads on this one, and then I can pop that down there, and I want it to sort of sit within this frame here. So there you go. How simple is that, but how effective does it look? It's just, I just think it's a lovely, lovely set, and these sentiments are just absolutely perfect. So that set runs through every single card that I've done, just used in a different way. But I just think it's just a beautiful set of sentiments that enhance your cards in such a simple way. So there you go, there's my cards for today. 3 different cards, 3 different methods, if you like, 3 different techniques, but all equally as fabulous. I think this one's my favourite, just because it's so simple. You know, you don't need to use the whole stencil set if you don't want to. Just adapt it to what you want to do with it. It's brilliant. Such a clever system. So I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all again very soon. Have a fabulous weekend, everybody. Take care now. Bye.